Hi, my name is Trevor. This is my Module 1 reflection on the public speaking textbook of Chapters 1 and Chapters 3. I have always found it pretty easy and natural to talk to people, especially on a stage. It's just been something that's, I don't know, built into me. And so reading Chapter 1 has really opened my eyes to the greater amount of things I don't know that comes with the theory of communication. I always knew that there was more to it, but I didn't really look into it. So now here I have a lot more information that I didn't know beforehand. A lot of that comes into the psychological aspects of speaking, which is like we take in our worldviews and we understand what people are saying through our worldviews. When we do speak to people, we have to make sure that we're communicating properly with the right body language. Reading this, it's kind of really pointed out to me that there are a lot of things that play into how people understand your speech. So for instance, if I'm doing a sermon and I am speaking on, let's say, abortion, for instance, it's a very hard-hitting topic nowadays, and in that we have to keep in mind, from what I'm reading this textbook, we have to keep in mind that there are different noises going on. So there's the physiological, the psychological, and the quite literal cultural noise and the outside noise. And all of this are kind of mashing together to form how they're taking in what I'm saying. And so I guess a lot of it comes into the perspective of like, hey, whatever you're speaking about, you need to understand like what other people are taking in. If, for instance, you're talking about abortion on stage and you're pro-life, people in the audience are going to start tuning out or getting upset. And so you need to find a way to go about it that, from my understanding from reading this, is good and ethical. And speaking of ethics, if we go down to Chapter 3, it mainly talks about ethics and how we can interact with public speaking in the psychological realm. So for instance, public speaking in Chapter 3 talks a lot about where ethics come from, which is ancient Rome and Greece. A lot of philosophers like Aristotle, Plato, all those people, they got together and they're like, hey, we know how to speak, but how do we speak in the right way? And so they brought up ethics and morals into the situation. And in this, when we fast forward today, we see that not only is there, ethics and morals, there is also diversity. How do you talk to a group of people who are the opposite skin color without offending anybody? How do you combat these really tough issues in situations where most of the people might disagree with you? And so going into the Chapter 3, it opened my eyes to a lot of the psychological aspects that go into it. And then they also dove into plagiarism, which, on another hand, can be psychological. You are stealing someone else's work when you commit plagiarism. The 3 different types of plagiarism is what they went over mainly. For instance, there was, what was the name? Oh, global plagiarism. Global plagiarism is basically word for word taking someone else's work, using it up on stage. So for instance, if I went and I said Isaiah 40:31, for those who hope in the Lord, he will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. When they walk, they will not grow weary. When they run, they will not grow faint. We read that, and if I don't say where that's from, I am just doing global plagiarism. Then we go to patchwork plagiarism, where I take the ideas of Isaiah 41 and I say, oh, well, those who trust in a God, they will not be sad. And we can go about this and say, okay, I'm taking pieces of it and I'm keeping and I'm changing a little bit here and there, and roughly has the same idea. That's patchwork plagiarism. And then the last one is incremental plagiarism, which basically is using the works, using parts of the works, using the meaning of the works without the works being cited. If you don't cite your works, no one's going to know where you're getting them from. They're going to find it hard to trust you, for one, if you don't cite your works. And on top of that, if you don't cite your works, it takes away from the person who originally made it. So I guess we have to keep really a good idea of that in mind whenever we're doing speeches or writing things out for essays. Like I said earlier, when it came to diversity and speaking right, you have to speak in a language that people understand. If you're speaking to an audience that, let's be honest, if you're speaking to an audience that is illiterate in some ways, you're gonna have to speak in a way that they'll understand. You can't go out there and use all these big words. You have to have that social awareness to understand, hey, I'm reading their body language. They're not catching what I'm throwing. I'm reading the cues around me. They're not catching what I'm throwing. You have to know how to be an ethical speaker and how to speak with people in a way that not just they understand, but in a way that that's not going to offend them. And you're always going to offend somebody. Just throwing that out there. But either way, I believe that comes to the end of my reflection, my thoughts on it. I think this book is very interesting. I'm enjoying it. I think it has a lot of good stuff to say. I think a lot of it is also very basic. It's stuff that I believe we know as human beings deep down, just naturally. This is just kind of bringing it up. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoy the video. I hope my teacher enjoys my video and that I get a good grade. Have a good one, and God bless.